What if I told you that Jesus wasn't the quiet, gentle figure we've often imagined, but rather one of the greatest rebels in human history? Someone who openly defied religious leaders, challenged political authorities, and revolutionized an entire society. Buckle up, because the real story of Jesus, the rebel who fearlessly confronted power, might just change everything you thought you knew about him. Jesus Christ was not crucified because he said, "Consider the lilies," but because he said, "Consider the thieves, tax collectors, and prostitutes. Love your enemies and challenge every injustice." Shane Claiborne. When we picture Jesus, we often visualize the peaceful, gentle shepherd, calmly teaching crowds on sunny hillsides. And while that image holds truth, it also significantly understates the radical, confrontational, and deeply rebellious aspects of his life. Far from merely preaching love and kindness, Jesus Christ stood courageously against the oppressive systems of power, both religious and political, of his day. He didn't quietly fit in. He powerfully challenged everything about the established order. Understanding the rebellious nature of Jesus is crucial, especially in America today, in 2025. We live amidst unprecedented political polarization, intense debates about social justice, and a growing tension between religious institutions and modern culture. Rediscovering the radical, rebellious Jesus who fearlessly challenged injustice provides profound insight into how we, as followers of Christ, can boldly confront similar powers and systems today. But what exactly made Jesus a rebel? Let's explore deeply into the historical context of his actions, teachings, and confrontations with authority, unveiling the powerful, revolutionary figure whose impact still shakes our world today. In Jesus' time, religious power in Jewish society was largely held by groups like the Pharisees and Sadducees. These leaders interpreted Mosaic law, controlled worship practices, and held significant social influence. They were highly respected, but also deeply entrenched in maintaining their authority, often at the expense of spiritual authenticity and compassion. Consider Jesus' powerful confrontation in Matthew 23. "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to." Matthew 23:13. This was no mild rebuke. Jesus publicly exposed their corruption and self-righteousness. He rejected their legalistic traditions that placed heavy burdens on ordinary people while neglecting genuine justice, mercy, and faithfulness. Breaking religious traditions. Jesus consistently challenged ceremonial rules about the Sabbath, purity laws, and social customs. Healing on the Sabbath, Mark 3:1-6, dining openly with sinners, Mark 2:15-17, and touching lepers, Matthew 8:1-4, all actions deliberately defying religious conventions. By openly confronting religious hypocrisy, Jesus fundamentally reshaped how people viewed genuine spirituality. His defiance wasn't rebellion for rebellion's sake. It challenged a corrupted religious system disconnected from God's heart. Jesus didn't just challenge religious leaders, he profoundly threatened political authority. At that time, Judea was under Roman occupation, ruled by powerful Roman governors like Pontius Pilate, backed by a vast imperial army. The Jewish people lived under harsh taxation, oppression, and strict military control. Many expected a Messiah who'd lead a violent revolution against Rome. Yet while Jesus never advocated violent revolt, his teachings were politically revolutionary. He proclaimed a kingdom radically different from Rome's oppressive empire, openly declaring, "My kingdom is not of this world, my kingdom is from another place." John 18:36 Navio. This claim was profoundly rebellious and politically charged, directly confronting Roman claims of absolute authority. Declaring another kingdom challenged the legitimacy and permanence of Rome's power structure. Radical social reversal. Jesus' teachings overturned Rome's social hierarchy. He insisted greatness came from serving others, not dominating them. Matthew 20:25-28. He blessed the poor, oppressed, and persecuted, proclaiming them inheritors of God's kingdom. Matthew 5:3-10. Caesar versus God. When Jesus famously taught, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's," Mark 12:17, he subtly but powerfully challenged Rome's authority. He implied that ultimate allegiance belonged only to God, not any human ruler. This threat was so significant that it ultimately led to Jesus' crucifixion. Rome didn't crucify gentle philosophers. It executed threats to imperial power. Jesus' crucifixion was explicitly political. Rome's attempt to silence his revolutionary message of a kingdom rooted in justice, humility, and compassion. Beyond religious and political power, Jesus radically challenged the deeply rooted social and cultural norms of his time. First-century Judean society was strictly hierarchical, deeply patriarchal, and openly exclusive, with clear divisions based on gender, ethnicity, class, and religious purity. Jesus actively dismantled these barriers, demonstrating an inclusivity shockingly rebellious for his time. Elevating women. In the culture where women were often marginalized, Jesus included them prominently among his closest followers. Luke 8:1-3. He openly affirmed and dignified women, defying societal norms. Embracing outcasts. Jesus openly embraced tax collectors, prostitutes, Samaritans, lepers, and others labeled unclean or socially rejected, Luke 7:36-50, John 4. His inclusive actions directly defied religious and social conventions. This radical inclusivity wasn't passive. It actively confronted societal prejudices, forcing people to reconsider their deeply held biases. It demonstrated God's universal love, fundamentally redefining social relationships and challenging existing power structures. Rediscovering Jesus as a powerful rebel deeply challenges how we view Christianity's role in our modern society. America today faces intense cultural divides, rising social injustices, and growing conflicts between institutions and individual freedoms. Amidst these struggles, Jesus' rebellious stance provides powerful guidance for believers seeking genuine impact. Challenging hypocrisy. Believers today can courageously confront religious institutions whenever they become disconnected from genuine compassion, justice, and humility, just as Jesus did. Opposing oppression and injustice. Jesus' rebellion against Rome inspires Christians today to courageously confront oppressive social, economic, or political systems, seeking justice, peace, and compassion rather than conformity. Promoting radical inclusivity. In the polarized society, believers can embody Jesus' radical inclusivity, actively breaking down divisions of ethnicity, gender, and class, demonstrating God's universal love and equality. Seeing Jesus clearly as a courageous rebel profoundly reshapes our understanding of him. Far from a passive figure, he courageously challenged religious hypocrisy, political oppression, and social injustices head-on. He risked and ultimately gave his life to reveal God's revolutionary vision for humanity. Jesus' life wasn't defined by quiet conformity, but by bold, transformative rebellion. Understanding this truth profoundly inspires how we, as followers, can courageously engage the complex issues facing America in 2025 and beyond. As we move forward, we'll uncover even deeper truths about exactly how Jesus' revolutionary actions and teachings directly challenge specific systems of power in his society, transforming human history forever. We'll examine his confrontations in detail, exploring the profound spiritual, social, and political impact of his rebellious actions. In Part 1, we explored the bold and revolutionary side of Jesus Christ, seeing clearly how he courageously challenged religious hypocrisy, political oppression, and cultural injustice. But let's dive even deeper, examining exactly how Jesus' specific confrontations with the powers of his day transformed society, threatened the status quo, and altered human history forever. First-century Judaism was governed by powerful religious elites, particularly the Pharisees, Sadducees, and scribes. They held immense influence, dictating religious practice and defining spiritual legitimacy. Their traditions, while rooted in the law of Moses, had grown rigid, disconnected from genuine devotion, mercy, and compassion. Religious leaders emphasized strict observance of rituals, washing ceremonies, Sabbath rules, dietary laws, often neglecting true spiritual devotion. Jesus sharply criticized this superficial religiosity. "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules." Matthew 15:8-9 Niv. Jesus' powerful critique highlighted the danger of religious traditions that appear outwardly pious, yet inwardly lack genuine spiritual life. By openly condemning empty ritualism, he threatened the Pharisees' authority, undermining their strict control over religious practices. The Jerusalem temple, central to Jewish worship, had become corrupted, dominated by religious leaders profiting from worshippers. Merchants sold sacrificial animals at inflated prices, and money changers exploited pilgrims. Jesus reacted dramatically, openly confronting this abuse of spiritual power. Jesus entered the temple courts and drove out all who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves. "It is written," he said, "My house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers." Matthew 21:12-13 IV. This bold public action profoundly challenged religious leaders' economic interests, directly threatening their influence and profit. It symbolized Jesus' willingness to confront corruption and injustice head-on, even at great personal risk. Jesus openly condemned religious leaders' elitism, their arrogant belief they were spiritually superior. His parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector sharply confronted this mindset. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed, "God, I thank you that I am not like other people." But the tax collector stood at a distance and said, "God, have mercy on me, a sinner." I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. Luke 18:11-14 NIV. By openly teaching that humble repentance surpasses religious pride, Jesus directly undermined the Pharisees' power, promoting radical humility over self-righteousness and inclusivity over elitism. While religious confrontations were central, Jesus' challenge to political power proved equally revolutionary. Judea was under oppressive Roman occupation, ruled by ruthless governors, enforced by military might. Jesus' teachings and actions subtly but powerfully confronted Roman political authority. Jesus proclaimed a new kingdom directly challenging Roman imperial ideology. While Caesar's empire emphasized power, violence, and conquest, Jesus taught a radically different vision. "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Matthew 5:5-9 NIV. This peaceful, humble kingdom directly undermined Roman values, confronting their oppressive power structures by offering a compelling, alternative vision rooted in justice, compassion, and peace. When religious leaders attempted to trap Jesus by asking about taxes to Caesar, his response powerfully challenged Rome's ultimate authority. "Whose image is this, and whose inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. Then he said to them, "Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." Mark 12:16-17 NIV. Jesus' clever response highlighted a profound political truth. Ultimate authority belongs to God alone, not earthly rulers. While not advocating open rebellion, Jesus clearly challenged Rome's claim of absolute sovereignty, asserting God's superior authority over political structures. Ultimately, the Roman authorities executed Jesus precisely because he posed a political threat. Crucifixion was reserved specifically for rebels, insurrectionists, and threats to Rome's power. The sign nailed to Jesus' cross, King of the Jews, explicitly labeled him a political rebel, someone who threatened Caesar's empire. Yet Rome's attempt to silence Jesus through crucifixion backfired spectacularly. Rather than destroying his message, it amplified it, demonstrating divine victory through apparent defeat, sacrificial love over oppressive power, eternal resurrection triumphing over death's temporary grip. Jesus' rebellion wasn't limited to religious and political authorities. He actively dismantled oppressive social structures, confronting deeply entrenched prejudices, inequalities, and injustices. In a society strictly divided by class, ethnicity, and religious purity, Jesus deliberately included outcasts, marginalized groups, and those deemed unworthy. Nutty, tax collectors, Matthew. Despised collaborators with Rome. Samaritans, John 4, are viewed as ethnically impure. Prostitutes and sinners, Luke 7, condemned by religious authorities. By openly embracing these individuals, Jesus profoundly challenged societal prejudice, demonstrating a radical equality and inclusion that reshaped society. In first-century culture, women held little social power or recognition. Jesus dramatically challenged this oppression. Women were prominent among Jesus' followers: Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Susanna, Luke 8:1-3. Women were the first witnesses of his resurrection, Matthew 28:1-10, an astonishing choice in a society that often disregarded women's testimony. These intentional acts powerfully confronted patriarchal norms, significantly elevating women's status and dignity, impacting social structures profoundly. Rediscovering how radically Jesus confronted religious corruption, political oppression, and societal injustice remains profoundly relevant today. America in 2025 faces significant challenges: religious divisions, political polarization, persistent social injustices. Reflect personally. How does Jesus' courageous confrontation of religious hypocrisy inform your spiritual practices today? How does his challenge to oppressive political systems inspire you to advocate for justice, peace, and compassion? How does his radical inclusivity prompt you to confront prejudices, divisions, and inequality in your community? By reflecting deeply on Jesus' revolutionary life, we uncover practical insights into courageously confronting modern-day injustices, corruption, and oppression, both personally and communally. As we continue, our next segment, Part 3, will explore precisely how early Christians followed Jesus' revolutionary example, defying religious persecution, challenging oppressive empires, and radically transforming society. We'll see exactly how Jesus' rebellion inspired his followers, sparking profound spiritual movements still impacting our world today. Having explored the radical actions and teachings of Jesus, his confrontations with religious corruption, political oppression, and societal injustice, we now turn our focus toward his early followers. How did Jesus' revolutionary example shape the first Christians? In what ways did they courageously carry his legacy forward, continuing to defy oppressive powers, challenge societal norms, and profoundly transform the world? Let's explore exactly how the early Christian movement embraced the rebellious spirit of Jesus, radically reshaping the world in ways still resonating today. Following Jesus' resurrection, the early Christians immediately faced intense opposition, especially from religious authorities determined to suppress their message. But rather than retreat or compromise, these believers courageously continued Jesus' legacy of rebellion against spiritual corruption and oppression. In Acts, we see how apostles like Peter and John confronted religious leaders boldly. After healing a man at the temple gate, they openly proclaimed Jesus as Messiah, despite knowing it challenged religious authority directly. The priests and the captain of the temple guard were greatly disturbed because the apostles were teaching the people, proclaiming in Jesus the resurrection of the dead. Acts 4:1-2 NIV. Despite threats, arrests, and imprisonment, the apostles courageously stood firm, proclaiming truth boldly, defying attempts to silence them. Then they called them in again and commanded them not to speak about Jesus. But Peter and John replied, "Which is right in God's eyes, to listen to you or to him? You be the judges. As for us, we cannot help speaking about what we have seen and heard." Acts 4:18-20 NIV. This courageous stance demonstrated clear rebellion against oppressive religious authority, directly following Jesus' powerful example. Early Christians radically rejected legalism and empty ritualism promoted by religious elites. Paul, especially, became a powerful voice against religious legalism, passionately urging believers towards spiritual freedom and authentic faith rooted in Christ alone. "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." Galatians 5:1 NIV. This bold rejection of religious legalism deeply challenged established religious powers, reshaping spiritual understanding forever. Just as Jesus courageously challenged Roman political authority, early Christians continued confronting oppressive political structures boldly and consistently, often at immense personal risk. Early Christians refused Rome's demand to worship Caesar as divine, a refusal deeply rebellious and politically provocative. Declaring Jesus is Lord directly challenged Roman political authority, risking severe persecution, imprisonment, and even execution. Roman historian Tacitus wrote how Christians endured horrific punishments rather than acknowledge Caesar's divine status, vividly illustrating their courageous defiance of oppressive political power. Early Christians openly proclaimed allegiance to God's kingdom, a radically different vision than Rome's empire. They promoted values like humility, compassion, forgiveness, and peace rather than violence, power, or wealth. This courageous stance wasn't merely spiritual, it profoundly confronted the very foundations of Roman imperial ideology, eventually transforming societal values significantly throughout history. Following Jesus' example, early Christians openly confronted oppressive societal norms, challenging deep-rooted prejudices, inequality, and injustice within society. Early Christian communities were strikingly inclusive, welcoming marginalized groups, women, slaves, foreigners, and others society rejected. Paul explicitly taught radical equality in Christ. "There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." Galatians 3:28 NIV. This revolutionary inclusivity deeply challenged societal prejudices, dramatically reshaping social structures and inspiring profound societal transformations. Early Christians actively cared for society's marginalized orphans, widows, the poor, and the sick. Historian Rodney Stark documents how Christians courageously cared for plague victims abandoned by society, radically demonstrating compassion that profoundly challenged Roman society's values. This practical love confronted societal injustice directly, demonstrating God's radical love for all humanity, especially those society rejected or ignored. The early Christians' bold continuation of Jesus' rebellion profoundly transformed human history, religiously, politically, socially, religiously. Their courageous stand reshaped spirituality permanently, rejecting legalistic corruption and promoting genuine spiritual freedom and intimacy with God. Politically. Their refusal to worship Roman emperors significantly challenged oppressive political structures, eventually influencing the Roman Empire's adoption of Christianity centuries later. Socially. Their radical inclusivity and compassion transformed societal structures, promoting values of equality, justice, and human dignity, still influencing societies profoundly today. Today, in 2025 America, the powerful legacy of early Christian rebellion deeply informs how believers can courageously confront religious hypocrisy, political oppression, and social injustices within our own society. Reflect personally. But religious integrity. Are there ways religious traditions in your life or community have grown disconnected from authentic devotion or compassion? How can you courageously restore genuine spiritual integrity? Well, political courage? In your community, what oppressive or unjust political systems might God be calling you to courageously confront through non-violent advocacy for justice, truth, and compassion? The social justice. How can your community actively challenge social injustices, racism, inequality, marginalization by modeling radical inclusivity, compassion, and practical love? Just as early Christians courageously confronted oppressive systems, followers of Jesus today have a powerful calling. Courageously continuing his rebellion against injustice, corruption, and oppression, profoundly transforming society as his earliest followers did. In our next segment, Part 4, we'll explore practical, specific steps you can take today to embody Jesus' rebellious spirit in your own life and community. You'll discover powerful strategies for confronting injustice, corruption, and oppression, spiritually, socially, politically, in ways inspired directly by Jesus and the early Christian movement. You'll learn exactly how to courageously continue this transformative rebellion, practically and effectively, shaping your life, community, and culture today in profound, lasting ways. Having explored the revolutionary actions of Jesus and the courageous legacy of early Christians who followed his example, we now focus on a critical question. In other words, how can believers today courageously confront injustice, corruption, oppression, and societal challenges, spiritually, socially, and politically, in ways directly inspired by Jesus' powerful example? Let's dive deeply into specific, actionable strategies for living out this transformative rebellion practically in your own life and community. Below are powerful practical strategies directly inspired by Jesus' actions and teachings, designed to equip you effectively and courageously in confronting today's oppressive systems and societal injustices. Just as Jesus challenged the religious leaders of his time, you can practically embody his spirit today by courageously confronting religious hypocrisy, legalism, or corruption wherever encountered. Just with it boldly yet humbly, lovingly challenge practices or teachings disconnected from biblical authenticity, mercy, and compassion within your community or church. To promote this authentic spirituality, lead by example, modeling a faith rooted genuinely in compassion, humility, and integrity, rejecting empty rituals or legalistic judgment. Encourage accountability. Establish or support transparent, accountable leadership structures in your faith community, reducing opportunities for corruption or abuse. Jesus powerfully confronted oppressive political power, not through violence, but peaceful, courageous proclamation of truth. Practically embody this today through strategic, non-violent advocacy for justice and compassion. Support just policies. Advocate policies and leaders align genuinely with biblical values: justice, mercy, compassion, humility, peace, rather than political agendas driven by power or division. Promote kingdom values in public life. Openly discuss and model Christ's values in political discussions: humility, servant leadership, compassion, justice, challenging political ideologies based solely on power, control, or division. Engage actively, not passively. Participate actively in community forums, peaceful demonstrations, advocacy groups, or political processes, courageously championing justice, peace, and compassion, following Christ's example. Jesus radically confronted societal injustices, prejudice, inequality, marginalization, through radical inclusivity, compassion, and active love. Practically live this today through specific actions. Practice radical inclusivity. Actively welcome and include marginalized, excluded, or disadvantaged groups into your community: ethnic minorities, immigrants, economically disadvantaged, the disabled, demonstrating genuine biblical inclusivity. Provide practical compassion. Engage personally or communally in practical compassion, helping the poor, supporting single parents, aiding refugees, advocating for marginalized communities, powerfully demonstrating God's radical love. Confront injustice directly. Speak courageously against societal injustices, racism, inequality, exploitation in your local community or broader society, advocating for genuine justice and equality. Jesus' kingdom radically challenged cultural norms: power, status, wealth. Practically embody his rebellious spirit by courageously modeling countercultural kingdom values today. Choose humility over pride. Embrace servant leadership in your work, community, or family, rejecting prideful ambition, self-centered status, or cultural obsession with power and success. Value people over possessions. Cultivate generosity, simplicity, and contentment, countering society's consumerism, materialism, and exploitation, powerfully modeling Jesus' radical kingdom lifestyle. Practice radical forgiveness. Courageously forgive personal wrongs or injustices, countering a culture of revenge, bitterness, or division, actively promoting reconciliation and peace in your relationships or community. Following Jesus' rebellious example isn't solitary. It happens within courageous, transformative communities. Build or strengthen such communities today. Foster authentic community. Create safe, supportive spaces where believers courageously confront spiritual hypocrisy, social injustice, and political oppression together, sharing openly, praying deeply, supporting practically. Engage actively with society. Organize community service, outreach, or advocacy groups directly challenging local injustices, poverty, racism, exploitation, demonstrating collective, practical rebellion inspired by Jesus' kingdom. Equip for courageous action. Teach practical biblical strategies for confronting injustice, oppression, corruption, equipping your community practically and spiritually to courageously embody Christ's transformative rebellion today. As you reflect personally, consider these practical questions carefully. Name which specific area, religious hypocrisy, political oppression, social injustice, most resonates with you personally today. What practical action could you courageously take immediately in your community, workplace, or relationships to embody Jesus' rebellious spirit? How can you intentionally build or strengthen a community, practically living out Jesus' rebellious, transformative values together? Consider an example scenario practically embodying these principles. You notice marginalized people, immigrants, economically disadvantaged, excluded locally. Practically respond by organizing compassionate outreach, providing food, support, advocacy, actively demonstrating Christ's radical inclusivity and confronting social injustice practically. Courageously advocate politically for compassionate immigration policies or economic reforms aligned genuinely with biblical justice. Speak boldly yet lovingly in your faith community, challenging attitudes or teachings, promoting exclusion or prejudice, actively embodying spiritual integrity. This holistic, practical approach directly reflects Jesus' revolutionary spirit, transforming spiritually, socially, politically in profound, practical ways. Practically living Jesus' rebellious spirit transforms personally, communally, societally, profoundly influencing culture and society in 2025 America. As we move to our concluding segment, Part 5, we'll summarize practical truths discovered, provide powerful practical calls to action, personally, communally, culturally, invite deeper reflection and personal engagement, close with a powerful, inspiring quote, practically encouraging your ongoing transformative journey. Prepare practically and spiritually, embracing specific, courageous steps, practically living Christ's revolutionary spirit personally and communally today. Throughout this powerful exploration of Jesus, the revolutionary rebel who courageously challenged religious corruption, political oppression, and social injustice, we've uncovered profound biblical truths, inspiring historical examples, and practical strategies for embodying his radical spirit today. Jesus wasn't merely a gentle philosopher, he was a fearless revolutionary who confronted oppressive powers, challenged corrupt systems, and radically transformed society. His rebellion wasn't violent or destructive, but powerfully redemptive, compassionately confronting injustice, corruption, and oppression through courageous truth, radical love, and active compassion. As we conclude, let's briefly summarize the key truths we've discovered, practically empowering you to courageously continue Jesus' transformative rebellion today, in 2025 and beyond. Here are the central truths we've uncovered clearly and powerfully. He openly challenged empty rituals, spiritual elitism, and religious exploitation, promoting genuine spirituality rooted deeply in compassion, humility, and authenticity. His proclamation of God's kingdom directly challenged Rome's oppressive empire, promoting values like justice, humility, compassion, and peace, radically different from political power and oppression. He embraced outcasts, empowered marginalized groups, elevated women, and practically demonstrated radical compassion, actively confronting societal prejudice, inequality, and injustice. They courageously defied oppressive religious, political, and societal systems, profoundly transforming society historically, religiously, politically, and socially, legacies powerfully influencing us today. You can courageously confront injustice, corruption, oppression today, religiously, politically, socially, through specific practical actions inspired directly by Jesus' revolutionary example. Consider deeply today in 2025. Which area of injustice or oppression most strongly resonates with you personally? What practical, courageous step can you take immediately to embody Jesus' rebellious spirit practically in your faith community, politically, or socially? How can you practically build or strengthen courageous communities committed actively to confronting injustice, oppression, and corruption together? If this powerful exploration of Jesus' rebellious spirit has inspired you deeply, practically commit today. If you found hope, inspiration, or courage, please like and share this video widely. Help inspire others practically and courageously to embody Jesus' radical spirit. Please subscribe for more transformative biblical insights, practically equipping you to courageously embody biblical truths in your life and community. Share openly. Leave a comment below with your practical reflections. How will you practically embody Jesus' rebellious spirit today? Which practical steps inspire you most powerfully? Reflect practically. Commit to courageous steps confronting injustice, corruption, oppression practically. Live actively as part of Jesus' transformative rebellion in your community, society, and nation. Reflect practically with this personal question. Share your reflections, experiences, or commitments below practically. As we conclude, embrace deeply this powerful practical truth directly inspired by our exploration. Jesus didn't call his followers merely to believe quietly, but to courageously confront injustice, compassionately challenge oppression, and practically transform the world. Today, choose courage over comfort, compassion over indifference, justice over silence, continuing his rebellion with courage, love, and radical faithfulness. And inspired by biblical truth, may you practically and courageously embody this revolutionary spirit, transforming your life, community, and society profoundly through courageous actions, radical compassion, and transformative love, inspired directly by Jesus, the greatest revolutionary rebel in history. God bless you courageously and abundantly.